How about now? Can you see it now? Why didn't you say something sooner? I know what you did. You clicked start and you walked away for an hour. What were you doing for an hour? All right. So let's do this again. So what I covered in the first hour all by my lonesome, because nobody told me that we were not transmitting. I'll blame that on Shoemaker. So we went over trimming sketch entities, extending sketch entities, offsetting sketch entities, mirroring sketch entities, patterning sketch entities, creating a sketch fillet, creating a sketch chamfer, moving a sketch entity, and rotating a sketch entity. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. This is out of chapter 3 that we are doing. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a sketch right here. Now, the one thing that go ahead and open a sketch here, and I'm just going to draw a series of lines. You guys have already seen this, but since the rest of the class has not joined in and have not necessarily seen this, they can catch this later on. All right, so for the trim entities here, we can do power trim, which I demonstrated to you guys last week, I believe. If I just click and hold the power trim button activated, if I click and hold on the left mouse button, whatever I drag on, it is going to go ahead and delete. Now, if I go back into trim entities, and I'll cover corner here in a minute, if I select this and right here, it will just get rid of everything. You can barely hear me. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Feel like, what was that cell phone commercial? Was it Nextel? All right, so that's trim away inside. Back up here, bring back all of these again. Trim entities, if we do trim away outside. Better now? All right. Do that. Trim away outside. So everything outside Verizon. There you go. All right. No, I can't hear you, David. Not at all. I can see you, but I can't hear you. All right. So trim away outside. We need to have two entities that we want to trim outside of, and then we just select the entities that we want to trim away from the outside, like we just did there. All right, what is our next one here? We have trim to closest, which I demonstrated before. This is almost like the power trim, except for here, if I click on, oops, trim to closest, whatever I select, is what it's going to get rid of. It's just going to trim away to the next closest entity. All right. Any questions on that one? All right. So our next one is to create a corner. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create myself a little sketch. Right here. And with our corner entity right here, if I select both of those lines, it will just go ahead and finish the shape to its natural apex or vertex right there and complete the uh, geometry that we're drawing. Now, the other option that we have, get out of there, if I were to have drawn something like that, because I didn't really know where I was going with it, I go into my trim entities with the corner tool. If I select those two lines, it's just going to trim everything on the outside away, and it's all done. So we have our finished shape. So we've got our power trim that we've gone over. We have our corner, trim away inside, trim away outside, and our trim to closest that we have done. All right. So I showed you guys last week a little bit, or kind of demonstrated some of the easier ways to draw some shapes in. If we're drawing something in particular, we can do this right here. Lock all those in. So we're going to add our relations to all of these circles. We're going to make them all equal. So I only have to dimension 1. And we're going to make it 20 millimeters. And then we'll go ahead and dimension these to 80 and 80. We have a fully defined sketch right now. So if we go back up to our trim entities tool, we can use trim to closest, which really what I prefer to use as opposed to the power trim, but you can use whatever you want. I'm just going to trim away the geometry that I do not want or do not need. It's going to give me a few little warnings right there. It's no big deal. And all I'm going to do is just going to make this part look all symmetrical here. Get rid of all this. All of our basic shapes. The only thing that we would have to do now is just, we can come in here and we can dimension everything. And what I will do, usually will do, is I'm just going to fully define my sketch. So we have some problems here. It's saying that it is fully defined, but we are missing some. We have a collinear relation. We have a collinear relation. All right, let's figure out why we are missing what we have here. All right, so here, this is collinear, so that should all be good. All right, so you don't want us to do that. They're all equal. Let's see, what are we missing here? Get this thing fully defined. I tell you, collinear. So it should be perfectly aligned. So vertical, there we go. So it's just missing those. We can add all that stuff in there to get our sketch fully defined. Make that horizontal. That horizontal. Lock that in place. And now we have our fully defined sketch here in a second. You'll notice that I am very particular about making sure that my sketch is fully defined, because it can create a lot of issues for you if you do not take the time to do that, especially if you have drawn a lot of features in after something and then you change it. It can throw something out of whack if you accidentally move a sketch entity somehow when you're dimensioning something or you're clicking around. It can really kind of mess you up a little bit. So, all right, so this is how I generally use the sketch or trim entities tool on here. If I'm doing something, I'll draw in all the geometry and then just trim everything out from there. All right. Any questions on that? I think it's pretty simple. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is our offset entities. So here I am just going to draw a little bit of geometry in here. And then I'm going to go ahead and dimension everything. Like so. Now, for my offset entities tool, I'm just going to click on that, and this is the distance at which right here that is going to offset whatever geometry that I select. So right now it's set at 10. I can change that to 20. I can make it 15. I can make it whatever I want, whatever the blueprint calls for. So if I click on my first line here, you see it selects everything. And let's say that I don't want this offset in this direction. All I have to do is click on reverse. It will change the direction, and you see that it actually scales it down to match the endpoints of my original geometry. So that's a good thing right there. I can also do bidirectional. It'll do the same thing on the opposite side if that's what I choose to have it do. The other thing that I can do is I can cap the ends, and it allows me to add arcs or lines. So you'll see on here that it has our arcs on here. And let me go ahead and finish that so you can see that. So it's added arcs to the end of it right there. I can back up. I can do our offset again. I'm going to change direction, but this time I'm going to add lines. And what it winds up doing is it just adds flat lines in there to close everything up. So if you're, doing a square, L-shaped object or anything like that, you can add it just like so. Okay. That is our offset entities. Right here. Now what we're going to talk about is mirroring. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that. So in order for us to mirror, we need one of two things. We need a plane, or we need a sketch line. And if we're going to use a sketch line, I always use a center line as my basis for my mirror. So here, if I go in and I just draw out my object, and I'm just going to draw in a rough shape. It doesn't really matter what I draw here. We just need something to mirror. Like so, right click and hit select. I can go ahead and dimension everything. All right, so now we have our shape. We have a fully defined sketch right there. If I want to mirror it, I'm just going to click on mirror. It's going to ask me to select what I want to mirror. So I'm just going to select all of my geometry here. So, and then I want to mirror about my center line. Like so. I have my shape. It's all fully defined. It exactly matches the one side that I've already done. So I'm good to go here. Now I have another option here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of this right here. Right here. Now you'll see that I have two dynamic mirrors on here, and that's because I demonstrated that earlier, not realizing that the video was not live. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it again. If you don't have this in your toolbar and you want to add it, if you go up here to where your little gear icon is and hit the drop down menu and click on customize, and then go to the commands tab and scroll down about a third of the way, and you are going to see the dynamic mirror entities. All you have to do is click on that and drag it up here to your toolbar, and you'll have a third one just like I do. So if you're really busy and fast like our Coast Guard guy is, then you'll have multiple tools to select from. All right. So in order to use the dynamic mirror, we need a center line. So I'm going to add a center line in here. And I'm just going to add it in here. It doesn't really matter what the length of it is. You can put in any length that you want. We're just going to put that in as 100 millimeters right there. But what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to click on dynamic mirror. And I'm going to click on my center line. And when I do that, what it does is it adds these little hash marks at the top and bottom of my center line. So now anything that I draw from this point out is going to be mirrored on the other side of my sketch as I draw. It's a pretty useful tool, or it can be. It can also be extremely frustrating at times. And as an instance here, I'm going to go past what I actually dimensioned for that. And then I'm just going to hit my button right there. I don't actually have to draw it in there. You'll see that it added everything in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple relations here to make this a little bit easier when I go to dimension this thing. So linear. All right, so we're going to make that 90. And then we're going to do this one at 20. Do that at 23. Do that one at 20. And we're going to do this at 20. Do that at 25. We'll do that at 30. Now, as I'm done, you'll see that I have a fully defined sketch right here. Everything is good to go. If I was ready to go ahead and extrude it, I would just go to my features tab, click on the extrude boss base. It's going to rotate it, give me an isometric view. I can do 10, 20, I can do whatever. I can select whatever amount that I want to extrude that to. I can change direction from where it's actually sketched at. So if you remember the sketch planes, front, right, top, as we draw this, this is considered, that's actual sketch plane right there. So I can sketch to one side, I can, or extrude to one side or the other, or I can do a mid plane where it will do on either side of here, and then it'll be based off of whatever dimension I give it is how that's going to go. So it'll be 10 on one side and 10 on the other for a total of 20 for that extrusion, like so. All right. So let's say that I extruded my part. I realized that I made a mistake. and it actually needs to be thinner. If I click on the feature, which is the boss extrude, and I come up here to edit feature, click on that, I can go in here and I can change this to a different value. I made it 30, and let's say that, oh, it needed to be 30, but I didn't want to do a midplane. I can do a blind, and I wanted to go from the opposite direction. Now, I'm going to show you something too, because this is going to be very important. I'm doing this blind, and I'm doing it away from me right now. I'm going to go ahead and bring it to me this way, as such, and I'm going to click on OK. That's good. Now I need to do another sketch, and I'm going to do it in the front plane. So if I click on front plane and I go to sketch, and say I needed to add a hole in here, so we'll make that 14, and then we're going to go ahead and dimension that to 95, and then I need to give myself a relation here, which is going to be vertical. Make me a fully defined sketch. Now, if I come back over here to my features tab and I do an extrude cut, you see where I drew that? I drew that in the front plane, so it draws it where the actual front plane is. Let's say that I was trying to do a boss right here. Well, now this is on the wrong side, right? So what I can do, this is from the sketch plane. I can do it from a surface, even though I sketched it over here, and I can click right here, and then here I can change the direction, and it will allow me to make a boss where I want it. But now it's giving me some errors right here from the face, from where it's drawn at. So let's see here. What do we have? Clear our section here. Asking me for a face, and that's what I've selected. And it doesn't want to allow me to do that. So this is where it's going to give you some issues with. So we can delete that from our sketch plane. Now from our sketch plane, what did we make this? 30? I believe is what we did. If this needed to be 20, then this would actually have to be, what, 50? In order for it to come out the way we wanted to. Oh, that's why. My bad. We were doing an extruded cut. So let's go ahead and fix that. We're just going to do this from our sketch plane, and then here we're going to go ahead and just make that 10 right here. So we have our hole on the opposite side. Now, same thing. To remember, I'm drawing in the front plane, so when it goes to draw this in here, like so, it's drawing it from the back side where the actual front plane is. Now, if I want to extrude this as a boss, obviously, I can tell it that I want to go from a face right here, and I'm not going to do I'm going to do blind, and we'll make this 20 right here. And make sure that when you are doing bosses, anything like that, that you have the merge result box checked on here. Because if you don't, it's going to make it a disjointed drawing or a disjointed object where you have two entities that are not joined. So if you're making something for like 3D printing, it's going to create errors for you when you go to 3D print this. So here I just hit my green check mark, and now I have a boss on here based off of my original sketch. Now, what I recommend on here, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these. We don't need these. I'm going to get rid of these right here. Now, one thing I do like to do when I am sketching, if I need to add a boss on something, on a face or anything like that, or if I forget where I actually extruded this part from, I will always draw. I'll click on a face and then I'll open a sketch off of that face. So then when I go to draw, anything that I draw now is going to be on that face. Lock that in. Come back over here and I want to do a boss. We'll make it 20. We're going to make it blind. Now it's putting it on the face that I want. So it makes it a little bit easier for whatever it is that we're doing. Like so. All right. So what we've covered our mirror. We've covered dynamic mirror here. I believe in our first sketch that was a dynamic mirror. Yes. It was not. That was just a mirror. So let's do our dynamic mirror right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get rid of everything on here. Go ahead and get rid of the sketch. And I'm going to get rid of this extrusion. And then I'm going to open up my sketch here. Now, what I am going to do, though, is I'm going to get rid of all of these sketch entities. And let's do this. We're just going to do a power trim. Right here. So now with our mirror, I do my dynamic mirror right here. I think I just demonstrated that, didn't I? I don't know why that disappeared on us. All right. We did do our regular mirror, didn't we? We did a regular mirror and we did our dynamic mirror because I have 3 of those icons on there. So obviously I did that again. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And we're going to go into linear and circular sketch patterns. All right. So here, I'm just going to draw my basic shape. I'm going to go ahead and dimension everything. This is like, whose line is it anyway? Right now, these values are arbitrary. They don't really mean anything because we're just drawing some stuff in here. So what I'm going to do now, be very careful too, especially when you have these boxes that have the construction lines in there, that you don't draw something on one of these construction lines, because it's going to add a relation that you do not want, which can throw off what it is that you're doing. So we'll make that 15. And then we're going to go ahead and dimension this. We'll make 15. And 15. All right, so I want to go ahead and do a linear sketch pattern, so I can just click on that one right here. Minimum number that I can do is 2. And as a demonstration here, I need at least 2 on here. If I do 3, then it's going to add a second one in there. It's going to give me 3. It doesn't really count the first one. It's just using that as the number. And then we want to do this at 20 millimeters apart. And I can add as many in here as I want. And that's all on the x-axis. And then I can do the same in the y. Once I add a number here, and let's do this here, we're going to make this 20 right here. And as I add a number, I have, and that's too many, so we're just going to leave that like so. In there, I have all of my instances in here, and then I can also select how many instances to skip. So if I pick an instance, I can just delete those instances. Out of here. Like And let's see here. Get rid of that one. We're going to get rid of that one. Keep that one, and we want to get rid of that one, so we can kind of change this up. We can keep whatever we want in there or get rid of whatever we want, but we have all of these in here. And then in order to make this fully defined, we are going to actually have to dimension between our rows, like so. And now we have a fully defined sketch. And if we wanted to go ahead and extrude that, we could to a finished part, like so. So that is our linear sketch pattern. Now let's go into our circular sketch pattern. Now here, go ahead and go back in here. We're going to get rid of everything that we don't need in here. I can do a circular sketch pattern in anything. Obviously, you can consider that like a bolt hole pattern if you want. Oops. Got rid of my dimensions there. Let's go ahead and get rid of all that. All right. You guys still with me? Or are y'all asleep by now? All right. Right here, we're going to go ahead and make that 150. So we've got a square plate. And what we want to do is we are going to put a bolt hole pattern in here. Now, two ways I can go about doing this. I can do a circle in here, and I can put a circle in here. So this is 150. And if we do, let's do it at 50 right here, and we're going to make that for construction. We want to leave that as a construction line. And then get out of the circle. I'm going to go ahead and dimension this here real quick. We're going to make that 100. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw in my first circle. Like so. And I'm going to go ahead and dimension my first circle. Now, you know we're doing good because we have a fully defined. I kind of figured as much, David. You got really quiet, so I figured you either fell asleep or you were on that other website that you're not supposed to be on during class. What do they call that? Onlycoasties.com? All right. So we want to do a circular sketch pattern. I'm going to go ahead and select my circular sketch pattern from the drop down here. And then I need an axis of rotation. So if I click the center point here, which is what I have, and then I need to select whatever entities that I want to do a circular sketch pattern with, and I can change the number on there and make sure that you have equal spacing on there so that it distributes them equally around the circle based off of whatever bolt hole pattern that you're trying to do as such. Now we are going to have to do some dimensioning in here to get these to come out the way we want it. And here we're just trying to get everything to lock into place. So it doesn't, you don't really need to change anything in there because they're going to be equally spaced holes. But in order to get this fully defined, I need to have something dimensioned from something. So just like so. And we have our first bolt hole pattern. All right. So if we want to do a circular sketch pattern within a circle, which kind of brings us into our, actually, let me go into this first. So I've already demonstrated this to you guys, but you're going to have to see it again, unfortunately, because not everybody in the class is here. So we're going to do some fillets and we're going to do some chamfers in here. We'll go ahead and dimension our box. Make it 150 by 150 as such. And then if I go to my sketch fillet tool here, and I'm just going to click on it, and I'm going to do a 20 millimeter fillet. So I have two options. To fillet this corner, I can click on the vertex of the corner here, right there, or I can click on either line here. I have to click on both of these lines in order to get that to go in, to fillet it, like so, or I can do the vertex, like so, and I have added my fillets to it. Now, like I've said in class, be careful with this. In some parts, you want to do these fillets after you have extruded it, in most cases, because especially on the CSWA, because they will oftentimes have you change the fillets on there. So it's best to do it afterwards. And as an example, I'm just going to leave that like so. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do an extrude boss base. We're going to leave it at 20. And remember that we can change what side that we go off of here, on here. And we can also do a mid plane, which will extrude it from our sketch on either side of the plane. And that's 20 millimeters, so it'll be 10 millimeters on this side and 10 millimeters on that side for a total of 20 on here. We'll do a mid plane right there. You can see our sketch is right in the middle of our part. And then if I wanted to do fillets on this one, so I'll click on my fillet tool, I'm going to put it at 20 right here, and I have my fillet tight, so I'm just going to do a constant fillet size on here. And if I click on my corners here, oops, see, you don't want to do a face like that. You want to make sure that you get the right corner there, like so. So, and now I have my fillets in here afterwards. Now you see that it adds the fillets in there, and I usually do all my filleting after my sketch is complete. Everything is in there, and then I'll go through and fillet everything. If they decide that they want to delete fillets on the next iteration of your part, then you can just go ahead and suppress it. And I showed you guys that last week. But if you just right click on that, and you'll see right here, this icon right here, it says suppress. If I click on that, you'll see that it gets rid of all of the fillets right there. So if there's a fillet in there they decide that they don't want to keep, then I can just suppress that one fillet and keep everything else as a result. All right, so I can unsuppress it. If I right click on it and click on unsuppress, it brings those back. All right, I am going to get rid of these fillets because we don't need it right now. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this extrusion right here. So we did cover fillets within our sketch. If we're going to do it within our sketch obviously needs to be open. And I'm just going to come over here to the fillet and then add my fillets around there. Now, the other option that we have is we have a drop-down arrow on our sketch fillet, and if I click on that, it gives me the option to do a sketch chamfer. Now, if it's doing a distance, equal distance, obviously it's going to make all of those fillets 45 degrees. So if we click a 10 millimeter fillet right here, and then I click on the vertex, it adds that fillet in there. Or just like the chamfer, just like the fillet though, if I click on these two lines, it's going to add a chamfer right there on that corner by clicking those two lines. So we'll do that again using two lines. I have my sketch chamfer, or I can click on the vertex of those two lines and it will add my chamfer as so. Let's go ahead and undo those. The other option that we have on this is to do a angle distance. So obviously if I keep it at 45 degrees, it's going to make it 10 degrees on either side. I can change this to whatever I want on here. And then when I go to clicking on here, it's just going to add it wherever. Like so. You see how it's changing the direction. So based off the lines that you pick and what order will determine where it adds the angle. Or I can just select the corner right there. So it made these the same up here and these the same down here, but they're obviously different up there. So you'll have to play around with that a little bit and get comfortable with that. Adding these chamfers in here. Again, chamfers are something that I usually wait until the end after my sketch is already drawn before I start adding any of that in there. If they make changes in the future sketches to the size of the chamfer, or they remove a chamfer, anything like that, you can just go in there and suppress it, and then it won't affect the weight of the part when you're done. So these are our chamfers. If you have any questions, let me know. All right. All right, so they are showing, we will go over rotate, even though you're never really going to, I'm not going to demonstrate the moving the sketch. I kind of showed you guys that a little bit, but you're not going to be moving anything. If you need to move something, let's say here, and I'm just going to draw this in here like so. Right here. Now I have an entity where, so this is all locked in. So there's not a lot I can do to move this in the X and the Y. Right here. So I can move it around, but it's, or I can drag it. In some cases, I can drag a sketch entity around. I can also do, under the drop down for the move entities, I can rotate an entity right here. So let's say that I pick this entity, my slot, and then I need to do my rotation here. And it decides it doesn't want to move it for me. All right, let's try that one more time. I'm going to rotate this. I don't know why. Center of rotation is right here. So let's try that again. I don't know why you want to be difficult today. Nope. Let's clear all that out. Clear selections out. Before I go to rotate that, let's do this. All right, let's try to do our rotate again. That's what we're going to rotate. Where is our center of rotation at? We're going to go ahead and select that. You'll see that we get our rotate right here. And then now I can go through and start rotating this however I want it, so I can move anything that I draw, whatever angle that I want on that. That will come in handy in some other designs that you are doing. I can also do here. And I can do my center of rotation. Okay. And take that one, so let's redo that. There we go. If you look at that, it is moving, rotating it around for us. And we have rotated it all the way around. All right. Now, it should not have rotated it from there. It used the origin here as its basis for rotation, and it should have used the center of our arc here. But you do see how to actually rotate a part if need be. All right. Let me go ahead and exit out of there. I'm going to go ahead and delete this out. And this brings us up to our first tutorial. I'm going to do so here. I'm going to go ahead and open up another sketch. Now, if I come in here, I have a radius of 60, so we're going to go ahead and get close with that one. Then I have a radius of 45. I'm going to get everything in here close, and this one's going to be 30. Now the center one I'm going to change into for construction because I don't need that to be solid geometry. And then I'm going to go ahead and dimension everything. So 120, 90, and 60. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw in some lines here. Go ahead and draw down to here. One more time. Out of here, I'm going to go into my trim entities tool. I can do a power trim like so. And once I do that, I have my shape. You see that it kind of turns a bluish gray color right there. So everything is locked in. Now the only thing that I need to do is add my circle for these holes in here. This is from tutorial 1. And what I'm going to do is I am going to put the center point of my circle to be coincident with this construction line here. So it locks it in place for what we're doing. And then the only thing that we have to do now is dimension this to 10. And then we need to dimension it from here, which is also going to be 10. See that it locks it in. And when it moves it, it keeps it locked into the our construction line here. So now we're just going to do a circular sketch pattern. So if we hit our drop down where it says linear sketch pattern and click on circular sketch pattern, excuse me, I'm going to click on that. So the very first one that we see up here in our parameters, that is our axis of rotation. So I'm going to click on the origin right here. So I'm going to click on that and you'll see that it says 0.2. And I only want to go 270 degrees. So I'm going to click on that. And then I need to have 10 items in there. And then I need to select what I'm going to do. Now, here, it has it going 347 degrees. I don't need that. I need it to be 27. Oops. What are you doing there? Why are you being so? Let's do that again. Axis of rotation. Right there. I'm going to do 270. I only want it to go around a certain amount. I need to have 10 on here, and for here. We're going to go ahead and click this entity. Now what I need though is I need all of those in there. So here, I'm going to make that 27, like so. And it keeps everything locked in there. So that's going to be the spacing between each of my circles is going to be 27 degrees. Right there. That locks that all into place. And now all I have to do is just dimension this. And once I do that, add 2 dimensions, I have a fully defined sketch, and it is done. The only thing that I have to do now is it doesn't say in the tutorial, doesn't give you anything, and you don't need to extrude this, but if we were to extrude it, then we would just come in here and say, we'll do it blind, opposite direction, make it 10 millimeters, and we have an extruded part. So what I'm going to need you guys to do today is draw tutorial 1, draw tutorial 2, and you're also going to draw tutorial 3, hands-on test drive 1, and hands-on test drive 2. And then when we come back to school, which will hopefully be tomorrow, we'll be out there on the conversational mills. You guys are going to program these into the conversational mill. Sound good? Are you still alive there, David? I think he fell asleep. And then the last thing, too, if you haven't already done it, make sure that you do the chapter quiz at the end of chapter 3. All the answers are in the book, so you shouldn't have any problems finding those. Yes, tutorials 1 through 3 and hands-on test drive 1 and 2. I can see that. I knew you were awake. I think Rob's asleep, though. Haven't heard from him in a while. All right. So that's what your guys' task is for today, to get those drawn up. If you don't get everything completed today, that's fine. You'll have time this week to get the rest of them done. But just know that you are going to be programming these into the conversational mill. So be prepared for that tomorrow. Hopefully the snow melts off enough to where we don't lose another day of class. And then who is this third person that we had join in? We actually have 5 people viewing. Who's Prash? All right. So if there are not any questions, that is going to be all that we cover today out of chapter 3. Those are the most important things that you need to know. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I see Alan in there. All right, Alan. Good to see you. Getting worried about you there. Didn't see you last week, so, just wanted to make sure you didn't get abducted or anything. All right, guys. I will see you guys tomorrow unless anything changes. I don't know if they have put out any updates. Let me check my phone here real quick to see if they have made a weather decision for tomorrow. And all right, so no, they have not made any decisions yet as far as tomorrow. So I will see you guys hopefully tomorrow. But if not, look for an announcement in Canvas. There may be an additional inclement weather assignment to do. So I'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Don't forget to save your parts after you draw them so you don't lose them.